Some people think you shouldn't talk about money in church, but Jesus taught that there's a connection between our faith and our finances, and we're talking about it today. Welcome to Epic Everywhere, practical teaching to help you grow in your faith no matter where you are on your spiritual journey. It's going to be a great day today, and I'm so glad that you made it. My name is Emily, and I'm the pastor for Epic Online, and as we get started, I want to help you make the most of today's experience, so we're going to take time to text in. You can either text here to 215-999-8575, or you can scan the QR code right on the screen. And then what? Well, after you text in, I'll text you a link, and that'll take you to our Next Steps Hub. We customize the hub each week to help you take some next steps in your faith, to check out ways that you can get connected here, and also to tap into any resources that we think might be helpful for you. And if you're new here today, welcome! I want to make sure that you take time to text in, because when you do for the first time, I'll send you a free, super comfy Epic tee just to say thanks for being here. When you click the link for the hub, you'll see a place where you can share a prayer request. The other week, that's exactly what Channing did. They let me know that they're walking through the final semester of college, and it's an overwhelming time. Lots to do, lots of pressure, and a whole lot on the horizon. I was just super grateful for the opportunity to pray and know that they're walking through something so I can be supporting them as best I can. So how can I pray for you? Drop something in the hub and let me know you're not alone. Also on the hub, you'll notice that there's a spot where you can give today. Thanks so much to everyone who gives. You're really helping to fuel the life change that we're seeing. And if you'd like to give today, you can do that on the hub or epic.church/give. And if you're watching this on Sunday, your generosity is on display in a big way because we're hosting baptisms at our physical locations. It's so cool to be able to hear some stories and really to see what God is doing in our church through our collective generosity. In fact, Thad, who's in the military and stationed in Louisiana, he's a part of Epic Online, and he's getting baptized while he's home at our Epic KOP location. So cool. So shout out to Thad and all of you who are taking steps in your faith. We couldn't be more excited to see what God's going to continue to do. Well, let's keep that celebration going because we are just 1 week away from hosting Philly's largest egg hunt. We are pumped and we can't wait to put on an awesome event for our city, and serving our community really is one of the ways that we show that we are for Philly. If you'd like to volunteer, there's still time. You can do that over on our website, epic.church or phillyegghunt.com. Another great thing that we have coming up and an opportunity to invite some people to is our Easter services. That's coming up in just 2 weeks. So up on the hub is a link to our Easter site, epic.church/Easter, to help you prepare for the Easter weekend. I've got some resources over there to help you invite some other people, something that you're going to be proud to invite them to. So what's going down for Easter? Well, we've got our Good Friday experience that's on demand right here on YouTube on Friday, and then on Easter Sunday, we've got our Easter services, and I'm so looking forward to celebrating with you and your crew, so be sure to get the details, and we'll see you then. Well, right now, it is time to get to today's message, so let's get to it.
Well, hey everybody, my name is Kent. I'm lead pastor here at Epic, and I'm so glad that you're doing church with us today. This is the third part in a series called All In, Finish Strong, where we're talking about what it means to be all in for God so that you can finish strong and that we can reach our full potential as a church and you can reach your full potential as an individual. You see, we believe that the moment that you become a follower of Jesus, God goes to work on the inside of you. He begins this process where he starts to change us from the inside out so that we become more and more like his son, Jesus. We believe that given enough time and given the right amount of access, God's promise is that he'll finish what he started. He'll finish the good work that he started in you. In fact, that's what we talked about the first week in this series. That being all in isn't about trying to muster up the strength to behave more like Jesus. No, being all in is about allowing God the access he needs to every area of our life so that he can change us from the inside out and help us become like Jesus. You see, behaving is about your actions, but becoming, no, that's the result of God doing this good work on the inside of you and it bubbling up on the outside of you. Now, last week we talked about part of being all in is learning to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow him. It's surrendering your whole life to Jesus. It's him first and everything else second. And it's counterintuitive, but what we learned is that it's in losing our life for Jesus that we actually find it. Now, all throughout this series, we've been inviting you to start praying this prayer. Here it is. God, help me to see as you see, and then do as you say. God, help me to see as you see, and then do as you say. And so I got to ask, how's it going? Like, have you been praying that prayer? I really hope you have, because that's what it means to be all in. To say, God, I really do want to see as you see, and then I'm going to do as you say. God, help me to see others the way that you see others, and then I'm going to do as you say. God, help me to see my time the way that you see my time, and then I'm going to do what you say. God, help me to see my whole life the way you see my whole life, and then help me to do what you say. Now, today we're going to talk about a very specific area. We're actually going to talk about seeing money the way that God sees our money. And we're talking about doing what he says. Now, for some of you, you hear me say that and you're thinking, oh man, like I picked the wrong day to come to church. What was I thinking? Oh my gosh, this is not good. Others of you are like, are you serious? Like I brought someone to watch this with me this week. Like you could have given me a heads up or something. Listen, I don't know about you or how many people feel this way, but I know that there are some that are thinking, man, why are we even talking about this in church? I mean, I'm all for God, like, yay God, all about singing the songs and all that kind of stuff, but I just don't know if we should be mixing a discussion about God with a discussion about money. Now, if you feel that way, I don't know if you know it, but you've probably already done that. You've probably already mixed those two things. For example, like if you've ever found yourself sitting in an annual review and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, God, would you please help me get a raise? Then you've already done it. You've already mixed those two topics. Yeah, you've already crossed that line. If you've ever found yourself in a position where you're like, God, listen, I don't know if you're real or not, but if you are, would you hook a brother up? Like, here's what I need. I need that house to sell, or I need that deal to come through, or I need those shoes to go on sale, or whatever it is. You've probably already crossed that line. You've mixed a discussion about God and money. And that's okay, because the Bible is full of a lot of things pertaining to what we should do with our money and what we should do with our possessions and the role that they should play in our lives. Now, I think part of the reason why this can be such a sensitive topic is because in 2,000 years of church history, there have been some churches that have misused money. And there have been churches that have mistaught this subject and said crazy things like, if you give God $15, he'll give you a new car. And it's like, oh, okay, seriously, like what is that even about? But listen, it's important that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like if you've ever been to a restaurant and found a hair in your food, I know that's disgusting, that's rough, that's a terrible thing. But when that happened to you, you didn't leave and go, you know what? I'm never eating again, ever. Like you didn't even leave and say, you know what? I'm never going to restaurants again. No, if anything, like at the most you said, I'll never go to that restaurant again. And so for those of you that find yourself a little hesitant, a little skeptical because we're talking about money and God in the same conversation, man, let me just encourage you. Because the truth is that even though churches haven't always gotten this right, don't throw out the tens of thousands of churches that steward money with integrity and with morality. And I would go as far as to say that we're one of those churches. Like we actually hold to the highest levels of financial integrity and accountability. In fact, we are an accredited member of something called the ECFA. It's the Evangelical Council of Financial Accountability. And what that means is that we go through an annual audit from an independent accounting firm to ensure every single year that we have safeguards and sound financial practices and controls in place. And just so you know, last year, we actually passed our annual audit with flying colors for the 4th year in a row. And I have no doubt that we'll pass it again this year as we get there. And so quick shout out to our financial team. So that's people like Joanne and Jake and our board. They all work really hard to make sure that that's the case. So way to go, guys. Anyways, all that said, don't let something that you heard about a church misusing funds or something like that keep you from learning what Jesus has to say about money. Because money is a really important part, a really central part of our lives. So let's get into this. So the first thing that you need to know that Jesus taught about money is this, that there's a connection between our heart and how we spend our dollars, how we spend our money. Now this is brilliant. Like this statement that Jesus made, like even if you're not like a God person or Jesus person or like a church person, when you see what he said and when you really think about it, you're gonna go, you know what? That is true. Like, that's 100% true. And what's amazing about this is that Jesus said it 2,000 years ago. And it is as true today as it was way back then. So here it is, Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse number 21. Jesus said this, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Now, let's think about this for a second. Where your treasure is your stuff. Your treasure is your money. And so Jesus is saying that wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. That shows where your heart is, which means that if you want to know where my heart is, don't take your cue from the fact that I'm standing behind a stand giving a message from the scriptures or giving a message from the Bible. Don't take your cue from there. No, you know what you should do? Look at my bank statement. Look at how I spend my money. Because Jesus teaches here that where your treasure is, that shows where your heart is. If you were to look at and take an account of how I spend my money in a month, you would know everything you need to know about my heart. Whatever has your money is what has your heart. Jesus said that that's true of all of us. Here's where maybe you might have felt this or run into this in the past. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone and you felt like you were competing with their stuff? You know what I'm talking about? It's like you knew that he liked you, but maybe not as much as he liked his car. You know what I mean? Like that situation. My dad had this t-shirt that he used to wear all the time. The front of the shirt said, "My wife said if I buy one more guitar, she's gonna leave me." And on the back it said, "I sure am gonna miss her." I know, right? Can you believe that? But if you've ever been in a relationship with someone and it felt like you were competing with someone's stuff, like that's what this verse is about. It's as if Jesus is saying, hey, like I know your heart is gonna follow your money and I don't wanna compete with your stuff. I want your heart. And so make sure that I have your heart, I'm gonna ask you to surrender some of your money to me. Because once you've done that, once you've surrendered some of your dollars in my direction, then I'll know that I have your heart and you'll know that I have your heart. And listen, this isn't about God getting your money. God doesn't need your money. He's God, right? It's not like he's sitting around looking and thinking, man, if I could just get some of what they got, then I'd be good. No, God is like, hey, I don't need your money. In fact, I'm the one who provided it. I'm the one who gives you everything that you have. What I want is your heart. And it's just a fact that how you spend your money reflects what has your heart. Another thing that Jesus said about money is this in Luke chapter 16, verse 13. He says, "No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other." And then in a summary statement of what he's trying to say here, he says these words, "You cannot serve both God and money." Now, at first glance, when you read through this, that kind of seems like a typo. Like of all the things that Jesus could have ended the sentence with, you cannot serve both God and, he could have said, you can't serve both God and the devil. Like that makes sense. Or you can't serve both God and yourself. That makes sense. But no, Jesus was very specific here. He says you cannot serve both God and money. Why? I think it's because Jesus knew that more than anything else, the thing that has the greatest potential to fight for the affections of our heart would be our money. The thing that we hold on to tightest, we hold on to closest, is our money. That one of the greatest conflicts that you're gonna face every day of your life is not choosing whether you're gonna serve God or the devil. One of the greatest conflicts that you're gonna face every single day of your life is whether or not you're gonna serve God or you're gonna serve your money. You're gonna serve God or you're gonna serve your stuff. And so the question that God asks is, hey, are you going to serve your stuff over me? Or are you going to choose me over your stuff? Because you can't do both. And God invites us to make our love for our stuff subservient to our love and devotion to him. Now listen, don't hear me wrong. I am not saying that we can't have nice things, or we can't want nice things, or we can't even experience nice things. You might be thinking, well, like, is it okay that I have a car? Like, of course it's okay that you have a car. Or maybe you're like, man, you think I can go to Mexico? I think God made Mexico, and he's probably fine with you going there. I'm just saying. Maybe not good with what happens once you get there. I'm just saying. I've been watching your reels. Anyways, here's the thing that I'm learning. If you begin to loosen your grip on your stuff, then your stuff will begin to loosen its grip on your heart. See, this isn't Jesus trying to get your money. This is Jesus trying to make sure that your money doesn't get you. Why? It's because money makes a terrible master. And so it's an important question to ask. Do you have money, or does your money have you? Are you the master of your money, or is your money the master of you? Now, the way that you keep your money from mastering you, the way that you keep your money from having you, is to be generous. Now, the problem with me saying that is that almost everyone automatically thinks that they're already generous. And I don't know about you, but there's not much that's more offensive than whenever someone accuses you of not being something that you think you already are, right? Like if someone were to say, hey, you're just not always that kind. And you're like, all I ever am is kind. Are you serious, you jerk face? That's how you feel at the moment. So it could be offensive to hear something like that. And so as we talk about this, don't get offended. Just hang on for a second. So one of the reasons why I think most of us think that we're generous, even though we're not, is because we're really good at giving to some things sometimes. We are. Like, we're good at giving to some things sometimes. Like, would you like to donate $1 or a few dollars to Breast Cancer Awareness Month? Absolutely, I'll do that. Or you're like, no, I'm a good tipper. Like, every time I go out to eat or get a service, I make sure I give at least 20% every single time. Or whenever a kid shows up at your door with a bunch of overpriced candy bars, you're like, you know what, kid? I'll take 3, right? Because it's for the kids. Why not do that, right? And we think that we're generous because we're really good at giving to some things sometimes. And sometimes we even give to some big things. Like whenever they're collecting money at the office for someone who's going through a hard time, we're like, sure, I'll kick in $50. And whenever there's a need at church or something like that, and you're like, hey, I'll help make that happen. I'll give 100 or 2 or 3. And so we think that we're generous. But listen, there's a big difference between random acts of giving and being a generous person. There's a difference between random acts of giving and being a generous person. Random acts of giving are great. Don't get me wrong. Like, don't stop doing that. But if you're a follower of Jesus, then you're called by God to do something even more significant than that. You're called to be generous. Now, generosity is pre-deciding that you will consistently give a certain percentage of your money away to serve God and other people. That's what generosity is. You pre-decide that you will consistently give a certain percentage of your money away to serve God and other people. Listen, generous people don't give because they were guilted into giving. No, they give because they decided way before they ever heard a pitch or a story or saw a picture of a puppy or anything like that, that they would just be a generous person. Generous people don't give because of what they'll get in return. Like, you give God $100, he'll give you 1,000. Ha! No, that's not why generous people give. You know what that is? You know what that's called? It's called a bribe. That's what that is. If you do this, then God's going to do that. No. Yes, doing money God's way does invite him into that area of your life, and he will bless you. But that's not why generous people give. They give because something made them decide ahead of time that they would consistently give a certain percentage of their income away, their money away, to serve God and to serve other people. They chose to be generous in advance. And so what does that look like really, like practically? When 1 Corinthians chapter 16, the Apostle Paul comes along and he gives some first really clear instruction about what it looks like or how you can be intentionally generous. Here's what he says in verse 2. He says, on the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with their income, saving it up so that when I come, no collection will have to be made. That's what he said. And so let's break it down real quick. On the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money. In other words, he says each one of you is going to need a plan. Like that's what this verse is. It's a plan for how you be intentionally generous. So, well, how much should I give? But what he says here, he says, you give a sum of money in keeping with your income. Well, you know what that is? That's a percentage. Now, in the Old Testament, we're introduced to the tithe. It's a word for tenth. And so we're encouraged to give a tenth of all that we have back to God. In the New Testament, we're encouraged to be generous. And I think that the tithe, 10%, is a good benchmark or a good starting place for what generosity looks like in a person's life. And so you give a sum of money in keeping with your income. Okay, well, when do I give this sum of money? When do I give this percentage? He says the first day of every week. In other words, he's saying, hey, it should be a priority. It should be one of the first things that you do. Like every single time you get paid, this is the thing that you do first. He goes on, saving it up so that when I come, no collection will have to be made. This is what being intentionally generous looks like. Generous people, number one, they have a plan. Number two, they give a percentage. And number three, they make their giving a priority. And in this way, if you look at this, we see that money isn't just a gift from God. It's actually a test from God. You see, the most important thing to remember as it relates to money is that it's not yours. And the scripture says over and over again that everything that we have is from God. Psalm 24, verse 1, it says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. God says, hey, it's all mine. And because I'm generous, I'm giving some to you, some for you to enjoy, but also some for you to steward, to manage. And maybe you're thinking, yeah, but that's my money. Like I worked for it. Like no offense, but I'm the one who got the promotion, not Jesus. What you talking about? Really? Well, Deuteronomy 8, verse 17 says this. It says, you may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. And so, yeah, you got the promotion, but who gave you the talent to do what you do? And who gave you the brain that you have? And who is it that puts breath inside of your lungs? Like everything you have, it is a gift from God. Every moment that you have is a gift from God. And this is hard because it challenges our American idea of ownership. That God says, hey, everything in all the earth is mine. But because I'm generous, I'm going to give some of it to you. And if you'll let this biblical reality move its way from your head down to your heart, it changes how you see what you have because you realize that it's all God's anyways. I mean, all throughout the pages of Scripture, Old Testament and New Testament, we're reminded that everything we have belongs to God. It's not ours. It's all His. Now let's think about this for a second because this actually has some implications. Like everything belongs to God. What does that mean for you and I? You know what it means? It means that we're not owners of anything. No, we're just managers of everything that God has given us. So here's the implications. It doesn't mean that God doesn't want us to keep anything or spend anything. It doesn't mean that God doesn't want us to enjoy anything. But it does mean that in all of my spending and my saving and my giving and in all of my decisions related to how I do my money and how I manage my stuff, I have to remember that it's not mine. That God is the one who's given it to me and that I'm responsible to manage what he's given me well. The question we have to ask is, what would it look like for me to honor God with what he's given me? Whenever my kids were little, they developed a love for fruit snacks, as did I. In fact, I rediscovered things like not just fruit snacks, but animal crackers and goldfish and Cheerios and all kinds of other things. But fruit snacks were probably our favorite. And my daughter Kaylee would come up to me and she'd say, "Daddy, can I have a fruit snack?" And I'd go get one of those little packages and open it up. And sometimes I'd say to her, "Kaylee, can I have one of those?" And she'd look back at me and she's like, "No, these are my fruit snacks." And I'd be like, "No? Like, what do you mean, no? Like, do you realize that I am the keeper of the fruit snacks? Do you realize I can fill your room with fruit snacks if I wanted to? Or I can make sure you never see another fruit snack as long as you live under my roof." You know what I'm saying? Well, gang, that's what we do to God. We act like and we live as if we don't know where all this stuff came from. It's all from him. Listen, they're all his fruit snacks. You're not the owner. You're a manager. And so we're responsible to manage what we've been given well. And when we don't, when we assume that it's just all for us to consume, Jesus had a word for that. And you're probably not going to like it, but Jesus said it. I didn't. Here it is. Here's the word. Greedy. Yeah. See, the problem with greed is that it's hard to see whenever you're looking in the mirror. In fact, no one has ever, in all these years, ever walked up to me and said, hey, Kent, yeah, we need to talk. I'm just so greedy. Like, that hasn't happened one time. It's because we don't see ourselves that way. It's not how we define greed. But Jesus taught that it doesn't matter how much you have or how much you don't have. If you assume that it's all for you to consume, if you don't manage what you've been given well, if you don't use some of it to give back to God and to serve other people, if you're not intentionally generous, then you're greedy. And the good news is that generosity breaks the back of greed in our lives. Listen, here's part of the reason why we're talking about this. Like, how we manage our money isn't a financial issue. It's not. It's a spiritual issue because it's a discipleship issue. Like, how you manage or spend your money shows who or what has your heart. And gang, that's what being all in is about. It's about each of us committing to go all in with our faith, holding nothing back. Not saying, okay, God, all but just this little part I'm going to keep holding on to. Well, it's loving God with all of our heart, not some, not part, but all, including our money. So we see that there's a connection between our heart and our money, that we're called by God to be generous, that being generous means having a plan, giving a percentage, and making it a priority. And that's not so hard whenever you realize that everything is his in the first place. Like, it all comes from God, that we're not the owners, we're just managers, and we're responsible to manage what we've been given well. And in that way, we see that money is a test. It is. Like, am I going to trust God with everything, or am I not? And then the last thing I want to leave you with is this. And not only is money a test, but it's also a tool. It's a tool that can be used for more than just ourselves. Money can be used as a tool for eternal purposes as well. And one of the things I'm most grateful for is that whenever Tiff and I first got married, we decided that no matter how much money we ever make, we're always going to give at least 10% of our income back to the church, back to God. I'm going to give it toward others and things that we care about. And whenever we see a need that we can meet, we're just going to try our best to try and meet that need. You know what I've learned after all these years? Whenever you do that over a long period of time, you end up getting to be part of some pretty amazing stories. Stories that honestly we wouldn't trade for anything. And so no matter how much or how little you make, man, I would encourage you to ask yourself the question, because I think that this question right here will free you up to be the kind of person that you want to be anyways. Here's the question. Do I want more stuff or more stories? Do I want more stuff or more stories? Because I'm telling you, for Tiff and I, it's not even close. Like, we don't miss the stuff, but we treasure the stories. Like, every baptism that we've seen over the years is a story that we get to be part of. Every marriage that's been restored or turned around is a story that we've been able to be part of. Every person that has believed, found faith in Jesus, or believed again is a story that we get to be part of. That all the good that we've done together as a church, all the serving we've done in our city, every meal that's been delivered, every kid that's been loved on, every person with special needs who felt like they were the king or queen of the prom for the prom that we threw for them. It's a story that we get to be part of. Do I want more stuff? Or do I want more stories? Then one day, all you'll have are the stories that came from what you did with a little bit of time and the little bit of resources that you had. Here's the thing at Epic, it's not just Tiff and I. There are a lot of people who do this, a lot of people who've done this, a lot of people who've stacked hands around this dream to build a church that would impact a city. And the truth is that those people are part of your story. Part of the reason you've been able to make a connection to God, part of the reason you're even able to watch this right now on YouTube, that it was produced and paid for and happened, is because there's a group of people who just pre-decided that they would be generous. And every week, it's a priority for them to be generous. And gang, that's where all this ties into our financial goal as part of All In. So we want to advance the mission of our church by coming together and giving $5.8 million so that we can fully fund our ministry plan and impact more people. For the last year, many of you have been giving generously to that, as Tiff and I, we've been doing that as well. And next week, we're gonna have an opportunity to take a big step in our giving. For those of you who've already made a commitment last year, you're gonna have the opportunity to affirm your commitment and say, yep, I'm gonna finish strong with what I committed to do over this 2-year period. For others of you, you're gonna be at the place where you're like, you know what? I wanna step up in my giving. I wanna increase my generosity. And so you're gonna have the opportunity to do that. And then there are those of you who weren't here last year, and all of this is new news to you, and you're like, really? And there's part of you that's like, yeah, I wanna be part of that too. So you're gonna have the opportunity to say, I'm all in, and I wanna be part of advancing the mission of our church as well. And gang, so whichever one of those you find yourself being, I wanna encourage you this week to be praying. What are we praying? Praying that prayer that we've been praying this whole series. God, help me to see as you see, and then do as you say. God, would you help me to see as you see, and then do as you say? God, would you help me to see my money, my finances, the way that you see my money and finances? Lord, help me to do what you say. God, would you help me to see the need in our city, what you want to do through our church, the difference you want to make in people's lives. Help me to see as you see, and then do as you say. And gang, if we'll all do that, no limit to what God could do through a group of people like that. Yeah? Yeah. Let me pray for you. God, we love you. Thank you so much that you first loved us. Lord, I pray that you give us the wisdom to know what to do with what we've heard and the courage to do it. Simply put, God, help us to see as you see and then do as you say. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, hey, I love you guys. See you next week.
Thanks so much for that message, Ken. I hope you're as challenged by this Finish Strong series as I have been. You know, I don't want to settle. I don't want to just be okay with the status quo in some areas of my life. I want to experience all that God has for me. And next week, we're going to be taking a big step together in this all-in journey as we commit to give generously so that we can advance the mission of our church and impact more and more people. So I want to encourage you to be praying that prayer. God, help me to see as you would have me see, and then do as you say. Help me to see my money the way you want me to see it, and then do as you say. Help me to see the needs in our city the way you see it, and then do as you say. And I think when we do, we'll be amazed at all that happens. Well, I'm so grateful that you are here today. Before you go, would you just take time to like, comment, subscribe to this channel, and then take time to share it with someone else? And I can't wait to see all of you right back here next week.